This video is not about a specific bookshelf or about like a specific book, really. This is me talking about a bookstore, one of my favorite bookstores, actually. Talking about the Tacoma Book Center. Where is the Tacoma Book Center? Well, it's in Tacoma, Washington. It's only about 20 miles from where I live. It's one of the last real, like, honest-to-God, like, used bookstores in the area. So I try to get there a couple of times a year. And so I think you should do the same. So check this shit out. For those who have been in or around Tacoma, the Tacoma Book Center is located right near the Tacoma Dome, a landmark that you can see right from the freeway. Personally, I have some trouble with the freeway right there because of recent construction. The interchange is kind of problematic, so I like to get there like this, and this, and this. Basically, you can get most places from 38th Street anyhow. That's just how I do it. The good news is that when you get there, it has its own parking lot, and I've never had a problem getting a parking space there. A lot of bookstores these days aren't much to look at, but holy crap, Tacoma Book Center is awesome inside. From the outside of the building, it doesn't look all that big, but inside it is loaded with aisles of tall bookshelves in random esoteric categories. There's multiple rooms, there's multiple stairs. There's just some genuine randomness in there. I feel like this is a place that everybody should see in person. Even if you're not a reader, it's just impressive just to look at. I have made some good finds here over the years, including this Dover edition of Robert W. Chambers' The King in Yellow. I actually ordered the book online and read it before getting this one, but that's actually fine, since this edition has a different lineup from the original book, and it also contains The Maker of Moons, another Chambers science fiction story that I've also been looking for, because that's also its own book, and I had some trouble with that, but then this popped up, thank goodness. Chambers' writing is a late link in the chain of influence that started with Edgar Allan Poe, that continued with Ambrose Bierce, and that ended up with H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft's The Dream Quest of Onan Kadath drew some inspiration from The King in Yellow. Pollutionar! This is the second book in Edgar Rice Burroughs' delightful Hollow Earth series, the sequel to At the Earth's Core, this one with awesome Frazetta cover art. I like the ace presentation here. The series has the distinction of being one of the 3 Burroughs series created right at the beginning of his career, right around the time that he whipped up Barsoom and Tarzan as well. There are cavemen, there are dinosaurs, there are evil ape guys, there's the psychic winged Mahars, there's a flip side world where the sun is in the center, and there's time literally has no meaning. This was done before The Land That Time Forgot, so this is the long-lost optimistic Burroughs, which is my favorite Burroughs. Baroness Orczy, a Dover edition of The Old Man in the Corner by Baroness Orczy, who is best known for creating The Scarlet Pimpernel, which I have also not yet read. I peeked and saw a fascinating introduction in this about how her father's economic woes led to her becoming an author. I'm a sucker for collections, and in all likelihood I'm going to read this one before I read Pimpernel, just because I'm a contrarian, and I almost never start with an author's most famous work. Give me some B-sides! Artistan and Genistan by the immortal Karl May. I talked some about May on my previous videos, so I'll just assume that you remember that he's kind of like a spiritual Edgar Rice Burroughs from the 19th century in Germany. I dig him the mostest. The Tacoma Book Center has a very alternative approach to shelving, which brought the May adventure book to the religion/philosophy shelf, with the supernatural thriller author Dennis Wheatley and oddball Robert Anton Wilson, who I was hunting up from my pal in Tennessee, Dr. Bullocks. The Yellow Room by Mary Roberts Reinhardt, which I turned up while showing off the store to my parents last year. I think I ranted and raved about Reinhardt a little. Her play The Bat, which has been adapted a number of times, was one of the influences for Bob Kane and Bill Finger to create Batman, because of the silent adaptation by Roland West and the sound remake The Bat Whispers. Great title. She specialized in drawing room-style mysteries, the butler-done-it type conclusions, which made her very, very popular in her day. She started out in 1909. You all have Sax Romer by now, so here's President Fu Manchu! With the Devil Doctor menacing a 1930s White House. This should be fun. This is a very nice pyramid printing. I really appreciate the pyramids for the presentation and the fact that they bring awesome old content like The Shadow. The Spider! Grant Stockbridge, who is in reality Norvell W. Page, doing his darndest to deliver Shadow-esque action-mad thrills in The City Destroyer. This 1975 pocket printing is actually a bit of a find, since unlike The Shadow, The Spider never really had a long successful run as a mass market paperback reprint series. It was not available reprinted in its entirety until recently. You can see that, unlike Doc Savage in the Shadow, this Forgotten series has to be presented as if it was a new property, despite the fact that it had a long, successful run in the 30s and 40s, and it had actually been adapted to film multiple times. What the hell? Edgar Wallace! Edgar Wallace was a very popular British author who helped to create King Kong shortly before his death in 1932. J.G. or John Gray Reader was one of his detective characters, and Dover has a smart-looking, although kind of bare-bones, volume of his stories. The Murder Book of J.G. Reader, which I think has been out under a couple of different titles, like The Mind of J.G. Reader. There's a few. I've seen it around on shelves. I think they're the same stories. I haven't really checked. I actually read the novel that kicked off this series, Room 13, which involved British gangsters, ex-cons, and villains using an abandoned prison as a headquarters. That one was kind of cool. John Gore! Two very attractive popular library printings here, complete with Frank Frazetta cover art! The content dates back to the 40s and 50s. Neither of these is the first book, but I doubt that'll make a world of difference. From what I understand, these are fairly straightforward Tarzan knockoffs. I do plan on reading them, but I am a bit apprehensive because of the abysmal experience I had reading another Robert Moore Williams book, Xanthar of the Many Worlds, which tried to do Barsoom, Fu Manchu, Conan, and Cthulhu all at once, and totally blew it by giving the hero hippie sidekicks, who somehow wound up with most of the dialogue. Williams was a pulp guy during my favorite pulp period, and he moved in some of the same circles as some of my favorite pulp authors, but if you look up his bio, you'll see words like adequate and mediocrity really is the kiss of death. Depending on how John Gore turns out, you may see a video about these in the near future. The Shadow! Shitloads of The Shadow! Each of these has 2 complete novels in it, and they're in the gorgeous original pulp format. One thing I love about Tacoma Book Center, and something that keeps me coming back time and again, is that they are never without these Maxwell Grant classics. There are over 300 novels in the series in total, and I have been slowly collecting them all. They keep these behind the counter, and I have to sort through them each visit just to make sure I don't go and buy the same ones twice. I have to go check on Google Docs on my phone because I keep an enormous list of all the books I own. It's a big list. This stack here is just to give you an idea. There are actually more hanging out on the shelf. I can't really say much about The Shadow that I haven't said before and hasn't been said. You know I dig them the mostest. Original cover art and illustrations for the win! So, if you're in the area or planning to visit the area, if you're in Washington State or in Oregon or even in Idaho, I highly recommend that you make the pilgrimage at some point to Tacoma Book Center while it's still around. It is probably one of your last opportunities to see an honest-to-God, like mom-and-pop used bookstore. So I recommend just come on over and, like, go hog wild. Check it out.